Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Kansas Speedway, a wild finish. So, Harvard become five-time winner. NTT IndyCar Series Long Beach Grand Prix is the championship pullover. Plus, they had IMSA. We got Supercars. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up for April 19th, 2026, week 3 of the grid ranking coming up a little later in the program. I'm Joe Samaniego. With me, Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight and Matthew Bro from Grid Rising on the air tomorrow and gridnetworktv.com. A special thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, Nico, and Gloria, our newest investors, for investing in the Grid Network. So we're very excited to be on the air. We have 1,800 subscribers, getting closer to 2,000. Subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. And of course, we accept Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Chat for one-time investment, and across social media at Grid Network TV and gridnetworktv.com. Where Matthew, I know you've been working hard on your article. Very unique day. NASCAR first, IndyCar on the West Coast. So plenty of time. Results, they're not going to be changing anything. So let's dive into it with the NASCAR Cup Series. And what a race for Tyler Reddick. On paper, pole, leads, wins. Straightforward. But when you look into this race, it could have gone very differently. Because for Tyler Reddick to become a 5-time winner, it was not an easy route. Denny Hamlin, he got around him and looked like it was going to be over. But then he gets into the wall. He thinks fuel's out, some sort of stumble. Then he gets around him. They're coming to turn 4 to take the white flag. Cody Ware, running last place, spins out, brings out the only caution for cause. So we had no caution for cause leading up to 2 laps ago. We're now entering overtime. Everyone does pit stop straight forward, 2 tires. Denny Hamlin, he takes it inside lane. Tyler Reddick, the outside lane, the restart. Kyle Larson looked like he was going to steal this. Tyler Reddick falls to 4th, comes to 3rd, to 2nd, to 1st on the last lap to get the win. And overall, 5th win in 9 races in 2026. Again, continuing his lead in the Cup Series standings. And for the first time since 2020, right here on the Grid Network, for the grid ranking, Tyler Reddick is the first NASCAR driver since Kevin Harvick to lead the grid ranking. What an effort by Tyler Reddick in 2311. We saw Michael Jordan go from the excitement, hands on his head, kept his sunglasses on so we couldn't see what his eyes were doing, whether they were big or just, oh gosh. The emotion him and Tyler Reddick went through, from thinking they lost this race to they won this race, was the last lap pass. Here is the top 10 of the grid ranking, with Tyler Reddick now leading Marco Bezzecchi and Alex Palou moving up. We'll talk about IndyCar later on. I got to ask you, now Tyler Reddick, we're 9 races in, and he's won more than half of it. 5 wins. How impressed are you with his 2026 performance, and is this his most impressive win of 2026?
I personally, Joe, I think if you said any driver, for that matter, was going to come out and do something that hasn't been done since Dale Earnhardt in 1987, and that is win 5 races out of the first 9, I would have said you were absolutely out of your mind, especially in this next-gen era, considering the most wins in a season, I believe, is 6. Now Reddick's got 5, and there's still, 20-something races to go? So, I mean, pretty awesome for Tyler Reddick nonetheless. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's his most impressive one, however. I think the ending was probably some of the most chaotic. If you look back at, obviously, Coda, he led like 58 of the 95 laps, really put belt to butt in that event and won there. And I think that was more impressive, especially when you had SVG in the field. And then at the same time, I would say Darlington as well. That was a race where he also started on pole. He only led 77 laps, but he was battling issues throughout that entire event. I remember, just like kind of here today in this event, when he had the tire cording thing and then thought he ran out of fuel, had to switch to the backup fuel, whatever was going on there. But at Darlington, he managed to put a huge gap on Brad. I think it was like over 5 seconds at the end of that event to win. So I would say those two are a little more impressive, but that's still to be the grid ranking leader to start the season for a NASCAR driver specifically is pretty dang impressive. And going back to, Kevin Harvick in 2020 was so fun to watch too, but for Reddick to do it this year, impressive. Like we had mentioned, first time since 1987. Any drivers won 5 out of 9. The most wins in a season in the next gen is 6. Reddick's already got 5, 9 races in out of 36. So, it's possible if he's going to get 6 or 7 or 8 wins total. Not sure. Anything could happen, but it looks like he's got a very comfortable lead in the standings now. 105 points to Denny Hamlin, who's in second. Those chase points are going to make a lot in terms of how they start. And like Denny Hamlin has mentioned before, he thinks realistically only the top 5 guys in the chase when that starts probably have a legit shot at winning it all. If Reddick can keep this up and even just cruise, keep finishing in the top 10, top 15, just get those stage points like he has been doing, I think this is a Tyler Reddick, possibly a championship favorite year. I don't know what the odds are, but if you win 5 out of 9, they're probably pretty damn good.
Very good. 5 out of 9. This is a route we haven't seen in a long time in the Cup Series. We have to go way back to the Winston Cup era, and I can't help but think with this new point system where consistency is going to matter, you got the chase. We've heard people talk about you got to be in the top 6 to maybe have a shot at the championship by the time the chase starts. I'm thinking this is going to get lower and lower because the way Tyler Reddick's looking, you're going to have to go through him. And unless there's a drastic change in pace, performance, a loss of form, he is looking hard to beat. Just the fact he could be running up there doesn't seem like a winning contender, but when it matters the most, that team delivers. Getting out ahead of Christopher Bell on the green flag pit stops, closing in on Denny Hamlin, getting around Denny Hamlin, and yeah, overtime helped him a ton because it could have been over unless he had a drastic last lap against Denny Hamlin, but that's just all what ifs because the caution came out. Tyler Reddick is on a roll, and that 23-11 team, I think, is one of the biggest surprises of the year, considering how last year went with only Bubba Wallace getting the win, Tyler Reddick being winless. But when we look back at it now, knowing that what Tyler Reddick is going through as a father with his youngest kid, that's a lot of stress, that's a lot of distractions, the lawsuit, now that's all behind him. Seeing the family in victory lane, he is just looking unstoppable right now at this moment. Denny Hamlin, team owner, I assume he still went to the victory lane to congratulate his driver, but he was not thrilled because with 2 laps to go, Cody Ware, 6 laps down, spun, and he drastically changed this race. While in every other series, for a lot of fans that follow us because of the grid ranking, they know yellow flag comes out at the end of the race, race is over. There's no overtime. NASCAR with the overtime policy, Kyle Larson managed to salvage an average day, lead the last lap, but then just coming out of turn 3 and 4, lost the lead. Chase Briscoe almost stole a win with the 4 fresh tires, considering he was the last car on the lead lap. Restarted 10th. Hamlin, he felt like Cody Ware spinning robbed him of that win. Now, Cody Ware, 6 laps down. He was 2 laps behind Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch, who were both a couple laps down. He was not going to gain a position by being there an extra lap. And really, unless overtime occurred and those 2 crashed, he was not going to gain another position. We know this led to an exciting finish, and Tyler Reddick getting the win where it looked like he was going to get the win, or Hamlin. Do you feel NASCAR should evaluate potentially parking cars that cannot improve their position in the closing stages of the race? And who's eligible for overtime rather than just the entire field that they're running?
See, Joe, as much as I would love NASCAR do something about it, I feel like they just can't. You've seen some chaotic things before with drivers. The one most recent memory, it didn't have really an effect on the result, but I think it was Atlanta, so Echo Park in 2025. Michael McDowell, I believe, got the lucky dog like 6 times, and he ended up finishing 13th. So I feel like if you're 6 laps down or whatever he obviously wasn't 6 laps down, but to go a lap down at least 6 times and then to kind of just get taken out because NASCAR doesn't deem you to be able to improve your position. I just feel like the way NASCAR officiating has been, I don't think they would make accurate decisions based on that. And I know you can look at another situation, completely different, but Kyle Larson missing the Coke 600, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was, missing out on the regular season title by 1 point. If the 1 point clearly had a difference in the regular season championship. So for somebody like Cody Ware, who was battling Kyle Busch and Shane Van Gisbergen, if he was taken out of the race and he couldn't get, or say Kyle Busch, right? If he was taken out of the race because he was 4 laps down, maybe he doesn't get ahead of a Cody Ware or Shane Van Gisbergen. And that 1 point could make a difference if he would make the chase. Obviously, this year, there is probably no way in hell that Kyle Busch will make the chase. But still, it's just the principle of the idea. So these little things can happen where there could be a huge wreck at, say, Talladega next week, where something happens and multiple guys drop out of the field, and then somebody who could have been taken out earlier could have ended up technically getting all their points back and finishing 5-6 spots higher than what they would have if NASCAR had just pretty much kicked them out of the race. So I think for that, it's just a really fine line between their decision. I don't have confidence in NASCAR, and I don't think really anyone has confidence in NASCAR to make that decision correctly. But it does suck for somebody like Denny Hamlin with Cody Ware. It was really funny to me because doing my story, looking at the quotes, the first time I've seen Toyota send out quotes, because they had a great day. We'll talk about that later. But Denny Hamlin's, they asked him what was the most frustrating part of the closing laps. And he said, obviously not winning. It's Cody Ware 6 laps down wrecking. I don't know. It just added up. I feel like it was the same move of blah, blah, blah. But pretty much mentioned Cody Ware at being at fault, the reason why he did not win this race. And he's absolutely right there.
Yeah, he is right there in that aspect, and I think you bring us a lot of good points, especially this is something where it's easy for everyone to say, oh, NASCAR should you're 2 laps down, you're not going to get in the position, pull off the track with 2 laps to go. The one thing I say, though, and you brought up with overtime, we get multiple overtime attempts, well, that could have been positions gained if SVG, Kyle Busch, or anyone in the lead lap goes out of the race if we have those laps under caution and they gain those positions. This is not an easy fix for NASCAR. This is something where if they were to even consider such a rule, you got to change overtime to who's eligible, who's not. And even if it's only the lead lap cars are eligible for overtime, well, if you get the big one at Talladega next race weekend and half the cars are out, all those cars that are 1 lap down are going to make the case. We could have gained those positions if we weren't in the wreck. So if NASCAR was to consider something, I would hope it will be something where they will really evaluate and look into making good decisions, not something rushed just to appease people. And look, we did something, and then we get these controversies because that's the last thing we need. I think overall we're off to a good start this season with the racing we're seeing, the officiating, how it's working. In fact, this race overall was a good race. At the end of the day, okay, a car spinning with 2 laps to go. If this was IndyCar, race is over, you know who won. But we have the rules, and it says we go to overtime. Does it produce craziness? Yes. But when you hear Todd Reddick say he had to really work hard for this win, and then he asked the fans to all enjoy that, and it's a pretty full house at Kansas Speedway cheering, well, NASCAR has a race product where, compared to other motorsports, some people will say, hey, I like NASCAR because at least they try to give us a green flag finish. So I really think it's one of those deals where if there's anything NASCAR could look at is if we want to do some change, we have to take in all those accounts of what if somebody's 2 laps down, there's a bunch of cars 1 lap down. What if we limit overtime? But if you do that, that means the race could end under caution. We remember what happened in Talladega when Kevin Harvick spun Trevor Bayne to ensure the race ended under yellow when he had mechanical issues. A lot of factors to consider, and I think right now, the way NASCAR's racing product is going, especially at Kansas Speedway, one of the best tracks, this race was fun to watch. Seeing the pit strategy work out with the green flag pit stops and how 6 laps between Denny Hamlin's tires and Todd Reddick's tires was a big difference. This is good stuff. We're on a good roll. We don't need to introduce new rules. We don't need to introduce ways to, oh, this will make it better, but it won't if you're going to have issues where, well, they could have gained more positions. They stayed and completed in overtime. So overall, I think NASCAR, you got what you got. Well, sometimes work against it, yeah, and the media will talk about it. When cases like today, it led up to an exciting finish that everyone was talking about and made for something where we'll be talking about this finish. And especially, I think if Todd Reddick goes on to become a championship, we could not be talking about how this is one of those race wins where they really dug. That move on Kyle Larson to gain all that track position, wow. He drove in there hard. I was thinking he was going to maybe hit the wall like Carl Edwards a few years ago when he tried to make that move on Jimmy Johnson, but he made that stick, and what a move. And Kyle Larson still winless this year, so we'll see what he can do. One driver winless, and I don't think he's going to win this year, especially after today. Kyle Busch struggled. One point was last place behind Cody Ware. Denny Hamlin, Acura Detrimental, said it's not just RCR, but also Kyle Busch as a factor for the struggle, because even we saw when Denny Hamlin and Todd Reddick were battling for the win, who did they have to try to deal with, trying to stay on the lead lap? Austin Dillon. He was on the lead lap. He was running great. Where was Kyle Busch? Way back in the 30s, a couple laps down. Now, Busch did not take that nicely and appeared to race Denny Hamlin hard at Kansas because of those comments. What do you think about Kyle Busch's response to Denny Hamlin's action detrimental comments?
Hey, I love it personally. I love when two of the greatest to ever do it are who were teammates for, ever. It seems like, 15 years of them being teammates. So for them to really have some sort of rivalry, it's a great thing. However, I would say both of them can be 100% correct in this situation. I think Denny Hamlin is absolutely right. He didn't want to blame Kyle Busch completely, but at the same time, I think all of us know that something is going on at RCR where they are just missing on literally every cylinder. And you saw it today with Kyle Busch. I know he had some issues, but even then, he was in the back regardless. I don't know if he ever really cracked the top 20. He was just abysmal. And that's not what you like to see. I was probably the greatest driver of all time. So for him to do that, Denny Hamlin has every right to, like he said on the Fox pre-race, that he has every right to tell the truth. And he felt like both Kyle Busch is at fault, but at the same time, a lot of it is Richard Childress. And then Kyle Busch has every right to defend his team that is paying his bills, whatever they are, whatever costs that they are giving him on this his fourth year in the contract, third year in the contract. Yeah, you're going to defend your group. I mean, maybe if these comments happened when Kyle Busch is on his way to like Aspire or somewhere like that, maybe Kyle Busch doesn't defend RCR as much. But right now, when you got a full season to go, you're going to say, well, Denny Hamlin doesn't know what he's talking about, so on and so forth. And yeah, that's really that about that. So with Kyle Busch, his response, the racing Denny a little bit hard was kind of funny because I feel like once we all saw Kyle Busch about to get lapped by Denny, whether it was the first time, second time, third time, somewhere, he wasn't 37th at the time, so it was last. Yeah, you got to race him hard. That shows that Kyle Busch, doesn't matter where he is on the track or what position he's on the track, he is going to give you, at least in recent memory, the best effort he can. And it was a little thorn in Denny Hamlin's side, but Denny Hamlin got by him, and it really didn't have an effect on the race. So I think for Kyle Busch, his response was very valid. I think Denny Hamlin's comments were very valid. I'd like to see them have each other as the guests on the podcast and talk it out a little bit. But for Kyle Busch, you could just tell after 100 races without a win, the frustration's getting to him, and he has every right to be upset. He has every right to be frustrated. I mean, it's still Kyle Rowdy Busch at the end of the day. It would be, I think his ship has set sail in terms of really improving on where he's going to go in his career. Obviously, he is probably a top 5 highest paid driver. The options are very limited now with where he's going to go. I know the rumors are he's probably going to end up at Spire if he does leave RCR, or maybe he just retires. Maybe he goes down to truck racing. Who knows what the heck he's going to do? But as a fan of the sport, you kind of feel bad when you see one of the greatest ever do it kind of slip. Kind of reminds me of Lewis Hamilton in Formula One a few years ago, where obviously the most accomplished, winningest driver of all time just was not winning at all. And then he got 2 wins with Mercedes and left. So maybe RCR can give Kyle Busch the Richmond setup that they give Austin Dillon and see what he can do with that for the final. Or is it Richmond that? Yeah. I think, yeah, it's Richmond where Austin Dillon usually gets it done. So, hey, maybe they could throw him that setup, get him one more win, and let him ride off into the sunset with another organization. Probably Spire, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't blame Kyle Busch either. You got to defend your team. You got to defend yourself. I know Denny Hamlin tweeted, like, I'm just being a podcast host, and I got these questions. You put yourself as a podcast host. You're going to have people respond to what you say. I mean, we all remember Denny Hamlin saying, yeah, I sort of wrecked Ross Chastain. But then you get the penalty for it. You put it out there. The fact that you put it out there, like, it might be Kyle Busch that's a bit of a problem, and the team itself is not just the team only. Kyle Busch is going to take offense to that, and you're racing. You're not just going to lay over. So, Kyle Busch, I think he did nothing wrong. I think this is just a fair game. No foul territory. You're racing. You don't need to make life easier. This isn't Formula One where we got the blue flag. Make it hard. I mean, and I was starting to wonder a little bit about how Austin Dillon was racing Denny Hamlin. He didn't want to stay on the lead lap, but also was like, oh, after what you said about the organization, I'm not going to make it easy for you. So it'll be really interesting to see how it all shapes up. The two of them, 27th, 25th in the points. Not just RCR is not looking anywhere promising. Maybe Richmond, where we've seen Austin Dillon has been really strong the last 2 years. Give that setup for Kyle Busch. But is that something Kyle Busch is good with? He has to make that work. It'll be really interesting to see how it shapes up. I briefly mentioned Trackhouse. This team, what the heck is going on? I mean, Kyle Busch finished 35th ahead of Cody Ware in 37th, but Shane Van Gisbergen, 36th, just dropped. You have 29th, Connor Zillage, not a factor at all. And then Ross Chastain, 26th, and the only time he seemed to got attention on the air, despite having a nice red apple bush paint scheme, he nearly caused a big crash 2 lanes above, trying to get in the pit road. Bubba Wallace had to take evasive action, nearly collects Christopher Bell. That could have been a huge wreck and completely changed the outcome. And of course, Christopher Bell, his day got ruined with overtime. Could have been an easy top 3 finish. But Trackhouse, they have just fallen. And we saw Daniel Suarez, the former Trackhouse driver, finish in the top 15. Had a solid day. Connor Zillage, he tweeted that team's working really hard. They're trying their best. But we know every team is trying really hard. Every team is trying to get better and better. Do we need to sound the alarm on Trackhouse Racing and where they are as an organization? Because this seems like it's worse than last year.
Oh, the alarm should be going all day, every day, like the Dawsonville siren when Chase Elliott wins a race. I mean, it's horrible. I feel bad. I know I was laughing on Grid Rising with Tanner when Connor Zillage last weekend made a comment about it feels good knowing that he still got it. And this is a 19-year-old kid who is the default rookie of the year in the NASCAR Cup Series, but this has had one of the best seasons ever last year. And for him to almost immediately lose his confidence just driving with Trackhouse, like I had mentioned, that's what Trackhouse Racing does to you, at least this year. And I mean, this is an organization where literally, I think it was 4 Kansas races ago, I think it was September 24, where Ross Chastain won this race. And they came out in this event and scored a combined 19 points between 3 cars. Literally, Austin Dillon scored more points as himself as Trackhouse Racing as a total with Ross Chastain, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Connor Zilic scored. Just, they are firing on no cylinders at all. And this is an organization, I know Shane Van Gisbergen on road courses, but they won 6 races last year and almost won more. And now they are just have 3 top 5s total this season between all 3 drivers through, what would it be, 27 entries? They have it's 2 top 5s and 3 top 10s. I had to remember there. But yeah, just absolutely terrible. And I know Justin Marks said on SiriusXM they're going through a rebuild. They absolutely need to be. It's very unfortunate to see their fall off, because it was fun to compare Trackhouse Racing in 2311 and their history. And now you've seen just 2311 absolutely take off and Trackhouse absolutely crumble. And I know because last year Trackhouse had 6 wins as opposed to 2311 only having 1. Now this year it seems like it's probably going to go the opposite way, where 2311 already has 5 through 9 races and Trackhouse has none. So they're going to win, though. Let's be honest. Shane Van Gisbergen is going to have at least 1 or 2 wins this year. I think if Ross Chastain, they find any sort of pace whatsoever, he should win a race. Connor Zilic still hasn't broken 100 points. I feel horrible for him. I get worried. Maybe if you're Connor Zilic and you're on a 1-year deal, maybe look to see if somebody like Rick Hendrick wants to throw you money and put you in that 48 car. So I'm not sure that's speculation, but unfortunately, I know Trackhouse has given Zilic his chance, but I know he's still young too. But if you see an organization like this where they're really in a rebuild and you don't really want to be that much a part of it, I think if you're Trackhouse or you're Justin Marks, you should look at Dodge. If Dodge comes your way and says at the Cup level we want more than Colleague Racing, I think you should take that opportunity to go from a 3rd or 4th base Chevrolet team to being the top dog at Dodge. Or because I assume they would still be top dog over Colleague, nonetheless, in 27 or 28. But these are all just fun rumor speculations. But it's very discouraging to see an organization like Trackhouse Racing, who does such great things for the sport. I absolutely love what Justin Marks has done with this organization in the last 5 years. But, it's just not going well. Randall Burnett and Connor Zilic are clearly not clicking at all. And obviously, I think should have looked at how that happened last year with Kyle Busch and Randall Burnett. They didn't click at all either. And then just Trackhouse overall. It's very, very sad, Joe. And it's just, I'm trying to think. I had a different point I was going to talk about, but that's really all I got, I think, on Trackhouse. I'll send you a chat if I come up with what else was on the top of my head. But yeah, just very, very unfortunate for this organization.
Yeah, this organization has done so much for NASCAR, and just to see them where they are now, I agree with you. Look into Dodge. Look into a change, because you're not going to be equal to Hendrick Motorsports anytime soon. You're not going to be in a position where you're going to be that top Chevrolet team. And this is a sport where, yeah, everyone's in the charter, and especially now with the permanent charter, Justin Marks really banked out getting what he got from Chip Ganassi and now what he owns. Still, it's like it doesn't take long till we see a team go from the top of the game to mid-tier to the bottom tier. And I feel Trackhouse was just nothing to show for this weekend. And really disappointing, especially when Shane Van Gisbergen fall further into points. Now you got no Trackhouse Racing drivers in the top 16. And this isn't when you're in. You can't rely on a road course win. You can't rely on Ross Chastain getting 1 win or Connor Zilic getting a surprise win anywhere. That's great. You got to win. Now get in the top 16 to prove you're worthy of a championship. And they got big sponsorship with Busch Beer. You see the ads in the commercial with the Busch guy, Ross Chastain, saying what's wrong, going around in circles. They're not performing. Somebody else is going to get that sponsorship. Which team, I don't know. But Spire's looking much better than what they are now. And I bet you it's safe to say 2 years ago, somebody told me Spire would be performing better than Trackhouse. I would say I don't believe it. But we now in that situation where McDowell had been in the top 20, Carson Hocevar is a weekly contender. And Daniel Suarez, the former driver, is off to a great start, considering where this team was last year was Justin Haley. I'm just amazed that Trackhouse has just fallen this far, and I think it's showing maybe there might be more to losing Daniel Suarez and Pitbull last year. Matthew.
Yeah, and I know they posted listings as well for like aerodynamic engineers or whatever. So they're really looking for help. But I just wanted to mention too, you mentioned Spire, and we're just 4 points away from having all the Spire cars ahead of all the Trackhouse cars. Now, if you would have told me that to start the season, like I said earlier, I would have said you're out of your mind, because there is no way. I would have said Ross Chastain is definitely going to be a top 15 car. At least maybe him and Hocevar are going to be close. But no, looking at the standings, Hocevar is up to 12th with Daniel Suarez in 16th. So he still holds on to that final chase spot. Shane Van Gisbergen has fallen to 18th, with Michael McDowell is now in 19th. He's actually one of the few drivers, that's why I'm giggling, in the standings, that did not move any spots. So Ross Chastain did move up ahead of Allmendinger, so he's 20th. But the fact that SVG and McDowell were just 4 points away from having Spire essentially be the second Chevrolet team in the sport, crazy. I know people comment that they have Spire, the TWG Global, they have the most money of anyone, which is kind of obvious. But for them to overtake Trackhouse as the second Chevrolet team makes you really wonder if they should, Chevrolet, specifically Trackhouse, should look and be like, hey, maybe if Dodge comes calling, or if Toyota comes calling, someone else has to go. If a Chevy team or Ford team leaves to go to Dodge, maybe you should pick up their slack. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. And then for Connor Zilic, too, he's been with Chevrolet for quite a while. I mean, he was winning Rackley War late model races in the car store with Chevrolet. He's been racing with Chevrolet in literally everything that you could imagine. So for him to leave would be crazy. So I think he'll stay in that pipeline. That's why I mentioned, I think if he can get the Hendrick opportunity, if I'm him, I know you're only 19 years old, but I guess would you rather be the third car on the third Chevrolet team or the fourth car on the best Chevrolet team? So I think if that's a legit option for Connor Zilic, he should really weigh it. And that's with all due respect to Alex Bowman, but you feel bad for him. He's just had terrible luck really in the last few years, and obviously this year the worst luck of all. But yeah, I guess if you're Zilic, maybe the siren should be ringing. I know it's only 9 races into your rookie season, but if you have an opportunity to be 20 years old and be put on the best team in the sport, you should probably take that opportunity.
100%, especially Alex Bowman. For a while, he was top 15, came home 18th place. Considering how his return was at Bristol, 18th is a good start. It's going to be a long road to try to get to the top 16. Doubtful that's going to happen. But if that seat becomes open with Hendrick Motorsports, assuming Ally sticks around as a sponsor, and they're one of the few sponsors that are on board just about every race, for a 19, 20-year-old, you got to take that, because Trackhouse, the promise they seem to have when it came to what we saw with Shane Van Gisbergen getting all those wins, SVG is on another level on the road course. You take away all those wins, now you're just talking about Ross Chastain. That's one win from this organization. I think this organization needs to start looking at themselves like, are we really doing what we can to be the most competitive team out there? Because I think the answer might be no. You're not at the level of Hendrick Motorsports from the support of Chevrolet. You're not at the level where one driver getting one win is good enough in this sport anymore. We've seen teams, one win from one driver, that's good enough. They're no longer around. Robert Yates Racing no longer around. Chip Ganassi Racing, he cashed out with the charter system. Morgan McClure, great on the super speedways, especially with Sterling Marlin, the Daytona 500 wins, but that was a single car team. Could just not get enough to a point where they could expand. You might have the charge. You might be guaranteed those 3 parking starting spots, but unless you get into performance, you're not going to be making the forward progress like the teams of 2311. That team has really, I think, shown you're clicking and you got everything going, you're going to be hard to beat, considering last year they were racing unknown. Will they have a charge? Will they even return? Will the team fold up? And now here they are, running on all cylinders, belt to butt, as you say, 5 wins in 9 races. Denny Hamlin, so many trips to victory lane. Has he lost count already? And we're only 9 races in. Talladega, if Trackhouse Racing gets that win, I would not see it as Trackhouse Racing's back. They could say that in victory lane. We're back. We got the win in Talladega. Yes, Talladega. Was there a big one to survive? Was there some luck involved? You're all in the pack. Did you position yourself? There's so many factors. Trackhouse has to prove to me they're back by winning on a 1.5-mile oval. If they could win the Coca-Cola 600, which I feel is one of the most difficult races, considering how hard it is these cars to handle, that would be a statement win. But a road course win by SVG, that's expected. A super speedway race win, it could be random luck for all we know. Prove it to me in the 1.5-mile oval, and then I will say, okay, Trackhouse is back. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And with Connor Zillage, hey, if Mr. Hendrick calls you like, hey, way things are going with the 48 team, would you consider? I'll be like, yes. I'll be looking at options. Young kid, lot of potential. Don't lock in with Trackhouse, especially if this becomes a tradition. With that said, wrapping up our NASCAR coverage, Kansas Speedway. Matt, before we let you go, any final thoughts from the Kansas Speedway race? And we could also jump into your shining moment.
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts too. Ross Chastain is one of those drivers that can literally win anywhere. So for him to not be in contention anywhere kind of says a lot. Like, he can 100% go out and win Talladega. He's done it before. Wouldn't shock me if he honestly did it again. And just overall, I think my overall thoughts of Kansas, I mean, it's pretty awesome, and it's just unfortunate and that a caution. We would have had the first oval race since, I believe, Richmond 2020 that would have went caution free technically, if you don't include like the stage breaks. We've had a couple road courses, I think at 24 and 22, that we did have no cautions. No, I guess cautions for cause, but man, it would have been so awesome. And I would have been, probably Denny Hamlin would have loved that. But overall, I think the 23-11 guys you want to touch on, I mean, all four guys in the top 15, that's pretty great for the organization, especially Riley Herbst running 14th, Corey Heim running 15th. I would say that's just as impressive as Bubba Wallace running 5th and Tyler Reddick winning, just because obviously the more cars you have, the less, I guess, experience. You're spread more thin as a team. And for them to put the 35 and the 67 cars that could run up in the top 15, I mean, both those guys were running even near the top 10 towards the end of that event. Then overtime happened, and then I think they both lost spots eventually. But yeah, that's my biggest takeaway. Also, Hendrick fans, not sure why they're mad again. Like, I've seen these comments on Facebook. I just wanted to jokingly touch on that. I mean, when guys like Jeff Gordon won a bunch of races, even 2021 with Kyle Larson, and then the whole team winning, 14 races? I think actually it was 14 between just two guys. I think they ended up winning like 16 or 17 as an organization in 21. They were not saying one damn thing about NASCAR being rigged or whatever, stuff like that. But now when Toyota does it and Tyler Reddick wins, who people seem to forget that Tyler Reddick is a very talented race car driver. Literally his worst cup season in the last, half decade was probably last year, and just because he didn't win. I mean, this guy was winning in RCR equipment. Like, it was pretty good. And then he comes out, wins the regular season championship in 24, almost wins the actual championship in 24. So it's like, this is less than 70-something races ago where Tyler Reddick was a legit championship threat. So it's not like this has come out of nowhere. I mean, Tyler Reddick's one of the few guys that could probably win anywhere. So for them to put the tinfoil hats on, the Chevrolet and Ford fans saying, oh, it's all rigged, it's really hard, I think, to rig, especially in motorsport, nonetheless. But yeah, that's kind of my thought. It's just those Facebook comments, Joe. It's like, man, where did the stuff that these people come up with? And I would honestly be saying this if Hendrick won the first 5 races too. If, I don't know, Penske won the first 5 races too. That's just because they're doing better. It's not because they're being inspected any differently. I saw somebody say Toyota's not getting inspected. What the heck are you talking about? They're clearly being inspected. But it is what it's just excuses for personal reflection that they're just something's going on with them that they got to say, well, I'm going to be loud and say something silly to make myself feel better about what's going on. But I don't know why we're getting offended by teams winning a lot of races. Like, does it really have that much effect? I'm loving what we do. I love being here with you guys. I love writing the stories. If Hendrick were to win the next 20 whatever races, I'm still going to love it. It's just, I mean, like, then maybe you're like, oh, well, what's going on there? But yeah, those are my overall thoughts. And I can get into my one shining moment. So it's just so you guys can stop me talking. But I would say Toyota overall, the reason why I want to bring that up is a lot of people don't know, but one of the founding members of at least Toyota racing in this specific capacity, Lee White, former TRD president, had passed away this weekend, and he is a big reason why you see Toyota in NASCAR and all these other top series and their success. So he retired back in, I believe, 2013, but he did just recently pass away. I believe Toyota posted about it yesterday. So I want to give a shine to him in the fact that Toyota had 4 of the top 5, 5 of the top 10, and 7 of the top 15. And you can even go as far as saying 8 of the top 20 finishers. So that's, I feel, is a good way to honor Mr. Lee White, and his passing is to go out there and put belt to butt. So with that being said, I think Toyota, I know they've been my one shining moment a lot this year, but the fact that they came out and had 4 of the top 5, 5 of the top 10, 7 of the top 15, and 8 of the top 20, that's just a hell of a weekend. I mean, you could argue too, I know I don't want to spoil the other stuff, but guys like Alex Palou and Brody Kostecki is really showing up over in the Supercars. I love to see his redemption story, especially after the whole Rebus and everything fallout over there. Just hell of an effort for Brody Kostecki and that team. But yeah, those are my one shining moments. My main one is Toyota. Rest in peace to Mr. Lee White as well. And that is all you got. Make sure you check out gridnetworktv.com for my story. And Grid Rising tomorrow on Monday night. Tanner and I have a lot of NASCAR, including NASCAR Euro to talk about, as well as, gosh, there's so much, Cars Tour West and Supercross. So tune in just to promote us there. But thank you guys, as always, for the opportunity to be on Grid Wrap-Up. And with that being said, I'm going to tip my invisible cap, and we'll get on with it.
We'll definitely get on with them. We encourage everyone. GridNetworkTV.com. Matthew Burrell's article will be there. And Grid Rising tomorrow. A lot to recap, including that big well accident where we saw the number 1 car go upside down on the back straight at Kansas. So Grid Network TV, and of course subscribe, hit that bell icon right here on YouTube. Cody, let's talk about IndyCar, and Matthew had mentioned about domination. Might be pullover soon.
Yes.
I still think it's a little early to say that it's pullover, but if he continues with his current form, like, man, is anything going to stop this guy? Maybe the only thing that can stop him will be the new 2028 car that IndyCar is expected to reveal at some point later this year. Because as we've seen in other racing series, when we see a brand new regulation set, usually some drivers take to it, and other drivers who have been dominating, start to fade. So we'll see what the future holds for Alex Palou. But let's talk about the now. And it was a big day on Big Fox with a NASCAR and IndyCar doubleheader with broadcasts from Kansas and Long Beach on network television. Meyer Shank Race's Felix Rosenqvist started on the pole and led a caution-free race until debris brought out the yellow flag. And during pit stops, Alex Palou claimed the lead and didn't look back as a Quick Ganassi racing driver won over second-place finisher Felix Rosenqvist. And after this, Palou retook the points lead from Kyle Kirkwood by 17 points. And now looking ahead, Palou has won on every remaining IndyCar track except for Gateway, Mid-Ohio, Milwaukee, Nashville, and we have the 2 new street courses this year in Markham, just north of Toronto in Canada, and then obviously the Freedom 250 Grand Prix, which is going to be on the Washington D.C. city streets. So Joe, I know you just alluded to this, but do you think this championship season is going to be pullover again, or do you think Kyle Kirkwood can challenge him all year round? Because Kirkwood and Palou, they're right there in the points, and then to third place and back, there's just a massive gap.
It's a massive gap from third place back. Kyle Kirkwood, I think, has the best opportunity out of all the teams to bring the fight. Really, if he had a better qualifying effort, I think he would have been a contender for the podium. I know Scott Dixon was in the way, but just imagine if he had gotten third in the grid, fourth. We're talking about he is right there. overall, and I believe he actually started fourth, but still, that's the margin between being on the podium and not. It is so close. You got to be perfect when you're racing against Alex Palou. Felix Rosenqvist, if that caution did not come out, I think we'll be talking about him going essentially start to finish, controlling this race, getting a win. That last pit stop was it. So for Palou, you got to beat him on the track. You got to beat him when it comes to strategy with Barry Wanzer, and now you got to beat his pit crew. When you look at the remaining races, it looks really hard. You got the Indy Grand Prix. Well, Palou knows how to win there. You got the Indianapolis 500. Palou is the defending winner of that race. Detroit, Palou again. Gateway, that's a short oval. There's some opportunities. But with those opportunities to beat Palou, you got to beat drivers like David Malukas. After a great start with Penske, he's going to be a favorite. Joseph Newgarden, he probably could have won this race last year at Gateway had he not flipped over and crashed. Road America, again, Palou. Mid-Ohio, that's a track where Palou could have won, but he messed up and lost that win. You then go to Iowa. That's going to be something else. Ontario, Markin. Monterey, Laguna Seca. Again, this is just all Palou tracks. Portland, Palou has claimed the championship here often. Milwaukee, he's good there. Nashville, there's just all sorts of opportunities where he could get advantage on Kyle Kirkwood. So Kyle Kirkwood has to step it up some. Qualifying, the pit crew. At least we could say, Kobe, it didn't seem like the pit crew was as lousy as they were in other races where we saw Andretti pit crews just become like Ryan Blaney pit crews and they were just losing positions. Kyle Kirkwood has a lot of work to do to be on that Palou level. It's still early enough. Maybe somebody could come in hot and get a streak going and bring the fight Palou. But Palou's a favorite. And I think, unfortunately, when he exited pit road with the lead, it was pullover at that point. And then the restart, the clean air and everything, 5-second lead, really it was Palou over the race.
And you're right. I thought the Andretti pit crew did a solid job today in the pits, and didn't really have any major issues. But their issue was mechanically, because that's why Marcus Ericsson retired from the race, and it was crazy because before today's race, Kyle Kirkwood, he had to have a change with his hybrid because there was something wrong with it. And then when Marcus Ericsson went out of the race, the broadcast said that they believe it was to be a hybrid related issue. So that's something that the Andretti group is going to have to sort out. If they got the pit stop thing figured out, good for them. But now they need to make sure that they're not having issues with the hybrid, because I feel like today was a huge missed opportunity, for that organization to build some additional momentum heading into the month of May. But I totally agree that and Andretti's going to have to be, or especially with Kyle Kirkwood, you're going to have to be perfect to beat Alex Palou, because this guy rarely makes mistakes and, rarely has any significant issues. And when he does, you need to be able to capitalize. We've seen even when Alex Palou is not having, the best day, like in Phoenix, you don't always see these guys completely capitalize on a bad day for Palou. And if Kyle Kirkwood in that number 27 Andretti Global team is going to have any chance at this championship, they're going to have to start doing that. And for those who are in, third and back in the points, they're gonna need Palou and Kirkwood to an extent, to start having some trouble, because it's really crazy. You have a 17-point gap, and then third and back it grows to like 60 and 70, 80 points back. Is really crazy to see. We're just a few races into this season, and Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood have separated themselves from other drivers in the NTT IndyCar series. And going back to the pole sitter Felix Rosenqvist, he controlled the race, and in the end the pit stops were different. And as I mentioned, this race was caution free, and up into that point when we got the debris caution, and Rosenqvist's stop was slightly slower than Palou's, was ultimately handed the number 10 Honda the win. And we know when coming to a tight street course like Long Beach, this has always been a track position race, and when qualifying, extremely important. So if you qualify in the back, you're probably not going to have a chance to win. So you really need to qualify up towards the front, which, Rosenqvist did. It was just unfortunate, that him and that number 60 team were not able to seal the deal, because we've seen the statistics of teams not named Team Penske, Chip Ganassi Racing, Andretti Global, Arrow McLaren. Outside of those four big teams we have in the IndyCar series, the other teams, they don't really win as often as those four giants. So this was a golden opportunity for Meyer Shank to win. And I do agree, Joe, if it wasn't for this caution that came out, I think we'd be talking about a Felix Rosenqvist victory with Meyer-Shank Racing, with them sweeping, the entire weekend at the Acura Grand Prix at Long Beach, as we'll be getting into in a little bit with IMSA. And despite, Rosenqvist's slow stop, we also had Joseph Newgarden run over some debris, and he kept running to a 14th place finish. But although Newgarden did have a flat spot on his tire because I believe he was trying to get around Louis Foster at the time, and he got in there way too deep, and ended up, not doing as well as we could have seen from Joseph because of the tire issues. So bringing it all back in, do you think it was the right call by IndyCar to make the other full course yellow given that debris? Because I mean, it could have cut a tire, but and it could have potentially been a safety hazard. But at the same time, it really sucks that this is the reason why Felix Rosenqvist lost this race.
And that's the thing. I feel it's easy for anybody watching from the public to say, "Oh, Newgarden ran over that. He didn't cut a tire. We didn't need that caution." Well, still, somebody could run over at a different angle, cut a tire. We were talking about why wasn't the caution thrown out earlier. Worst case, for some reason, if something occurred and that piece of debris becomes a projectile and flies over the catch fence, now we're talking about a serious problem if it gets near the fans. So overall, I get it. There's some people that feel like it shouldn't be a caution because this threw the race for Felix Rosenqvist. But this is part of motorsports. This is just part of the way the sport goes. This was a piece of debris. I think of Supercar series where we had that little weird animal, the echidna, get on the track, and that turned the Bathurst 1000 from a caution-free race to a crazy, spectacular race that everybody was talking about how crazy it was because that little animal get on track. That changed the outcome of the race. This is just factors of racing. Pieces of debris from hard racing, fell off a car. You have to throw out the caution. This shouldn't be a debate, really. So while I get it, some people are talking about they're tired of Alex Palou winning. They're tired of, seeing the same repeat winner. This is motorsports. These teams are going out there trying to go out there and get the win. They're not racing out there just for fun. They're not racing out there that, oh, let's finish second place so Felix can get a second career IndyCar win and feel good about it. No, they want to go out there and win for their sponsors, win for their livelihood. This is motorsports, people. I just really feel like, man, it's a lousy for Felix Rosenqvist. Yes, would that have been a popular win? People feel good to see him get a second win? Yes. But this is just part of racing. Could have been pieces of debris. Could have been a echidna like we saw at Bathurst 1000. Or a late caution for a spin like we saw in Kansas. In motorsports, anything can happen. And this is just the way it goes with racing. This wasn't a predetermined caution flag. This wasn't a predetermined phantom caution, which I know some series talk about, but this was not the case. This was a legitimate caution. And even if Newgarden ran it over and continue on without issue, you still got to bring that caution out because you just never know. That could go over the catch fence, depending on how somebody hits it, or worse, cut a tire. And then when we talk about controversy, why didn't IndyCar throw the caution sooner?
Yeah, I think IndyCar made the right call to throw the caution flag in this instance. And it was unfortunate it ended up costing, Felix Rosenqvist the race, but it's really nice that IndyCar is not doing what they used to do. If this was IndyCar a few years ago, they see the debris and then you see all the teams coming in pit. And then, then once everyone cycle through, then they're going to throw the caution. But during that time, you'll try to give teams maybe 2 or 3 laps to try to come in the pits before you throw the caution. Then someone could run over that and cut a tire. And can you imagine if that was Felix Rosenqvist cuts a tire and then, then his podium finish and runner up, goes completely down the drain, or even like Alex Palou, if he cuts a tire, then, that ends up ruining his day and he doesn't get to win. So I believe that IndyCar made the right thing in this situation, that they had no choice but to throw the caution flag, because you don't want a driver to run over the debris and have a flat tire and then you completely change the outcome of the race in this instance. I mean, the outcome of the race still changed with Rosenqvist, but like you said, Joe, that's just racing. That's just how it goes sometime in motorsports. Sometimes you're going to be on the right side of the strategy, other times you're not going to be on the right side. And Felix had a good strategy going. It was just unfortunate, just a little slow, coming out of the pits. And Alex Palou, he was able to, his pit crew was able to execute perfectly and get him out, ahead of Rosenqvist, and that ended up determining the race. And Joe, you also brought up the point about the fans not appreciating, the Palou dominance and anything like that. I think it's unfortunate, that's the type of society we're in. But it's normal whenever you see someone dominating in any sport, not just auto racing, but in football, basketball, soccer, any of those sports out there. When you see one team consistently dominating, you see a lot of fatigue and frustration because you remember in the past decade or so, not just the past decade, last 10, 15 years, last 2 decades in the NFL, a lot of people got sick of the New England Patriots, winning all the time in NFL, or in recent memory, the Kansas City Chiefs. People just don't like to see that type of domination because they want to see a lot more parity. And then once said dynasty is over or said driver retires, then they're like, man, I wish I should have appreciated what he or she was doing during that time. And I think that a lot of the same people who are frustrated with the Palou domination are going to be saying, once this run is over from Alex Palou, but 5-10 years later, they're going to be like, wow, I was really watching one of the all-time great IndyCar drivers and then appreciate what he was doing enough. So I think we need to have a little bit more perspective when it comes to those situations.
I 100% agree. I remember being younger and getting tired of the Michael Schumacher Ferrari domination at F1. And then here comes a young Fernando Alonso, Renault, and they brought the fight in 2005. Was it exciting? Yes. Was it great to see someone establish the dominant team? Yes. But part of F1 racing in nature is there's going to be a team that will dominate. There's going to be a team that comes out with that better car, with that better tire. Is there that fatigue? Yes. But looking back on it, we look at that as Michael Schumacher was on top of the game. Ferrari was on top of the game. And they got those records because they're on top of the game. If you have something like Formula E, where we've joked about the Wheel of Destiny, I feel sometimes that hurts Formula E because, who is your top star? Who is your most dominant team? Who's the team everyone's trying to beat? Well, this week it's DS. Next week is Porsche. Next week is Jaguar. There is no dominant team. Everybody could clearly say, who's the team to beat? Who's the driver to beat in IndyCar? That's Palou.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like dominance and excellence in motorsports, should be celebrated in every aspect. So hopefully as time goes on, people will start to appreciate what Alex Palou is doing because you never know, when this magic carpet ride is going to end. And in the 25 car field, Marcus Ericsson was the only car out for mechanical issues with the hybrid, as I mentioned, and Marcus Armstrong was the only car one lap down. So if your name was Marcus today, it was not a good day for you. And one of the biggest movers in the race was Aaron McLaren's Nolan Siegel, who ended up finishing 12th. He started in last place in 25th and made up a ton of ground after crashing yesterday on Saturday. So, Joe, based on how Nolan Siegel's race turned out, coming from, crashing yesterday, starting at the very back of the grid, working his way up to almost a top 10, still not on the same level as a Pato Award, but outperforming Christian Lundgaard, who was honestly nowhere this weekend. Do you believe that this was a huge win for Nolan Siegel, who hopes to keep his seat at McLaren?
I would say it's a win. How big of a win? That's yet to be determined. I think what will really determine how big of an effort this was for him is what's going to happen the next race weekend when it comes to the Indianapolis Grand Prix. Can he have a better result, a qualifying effort where he shows he could be a contender for the top 10? We go to the Indianapolis 500. I know we talked about that could be the good benchmark of where are you as a driver, because after the Indy 500, that could be an easy time for McLaren to say, we're making a change if things don't work out. I was very impressed by him. I know after the crash we saw earlier this week, starting last, I thought, okay, we're best of luck to you. You might finish in somewhere outside the top 20. But no, what an effort by him to keep working, get those positions. We saw how Lundgaard just was unable to do anything. Was there strategy involved? Yes. But he still had to drive that car and put himself in that position, especially coming out of the final corner where you had Newgarden and a bunch of drivers all racing for position hard. This is something where I feel like for Nolan Siegel, he should look at this as this was a big moment for me, my drive and confidence, showing to the team I could do this. Coming up to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Grand Prix, a road course. Another great opportunity to go out there, have a strong run. And especially where we saw with Errol McLaren this race weekend, Lundgaard, as you said, seemed to be nowhere. Pato O'Ward, not able to capitalize. Started in the front row, but just nothing to show. No podium. Ran up well, but this is McLaren. They should be contending for wins, not, well, we fell back and we still finished in the top 5, but we missed out on the podium. I think he can make the case if he has a strong run at Indianapolis. Give me some more time. But that's the thing. He needs to have a good run at the Indianapolis Grand Prix. And if he does, back that up with a strong run at the Indianapolis 500, where we know Pato O'Ward will be one of the favorites to win. Christian Lundgaard, I think, will have a big year this year when it comes to Indy 500. He has to show he's worthy of staying in there. And I would say the jury's out, but Siegel, I think, at least, my opinion, has shown, okay, he might be able to do something.
Yeah, and I know we've been very critical of Nolan Siegel, on this show for over the last year or so, but we have to give credit where it's due, and I thought Nolan Siegel had a solid race today. I think he can definitely look at today as a huge win for him, because on a track like Long Beach, it's very difficult to pass and to say you came from the very last row on the grid from last place and to almost get a top 10 finish. That's a really big deal for any driver, especially a driver who's probably has the hottest seat in the entire NTT IndyCar series right now. But I will say that's one, right? Just one really good result that, nobody really expected you to get. And my thing is, my question for Nolan Siegel is, when we get to the Indianapolis road course, which is the next race in the month of May, can you do it again? Yeah, like I want to see Nolan Siegel, run well and finish inside the top 15 again, or maybe even exceed what we think he can do, get in the top 10. Could a top 5 be possible? I'm thinking unlikely there, but if he can get inside the top 15, top 10 and start, building some consistency there, I think he could potentially at least keep his seat through the end of the season. But if he continues to underperform compared to his teammates in the next several races or a couple of races or so, then I think, he could really be in trouble. But I think for now, he should go to bed tonight with a smile on his face, happy with the way things have gone, because it's not easy around the streets of Long Beach to come from 25th to 12th on the grid. And that's something he should absolutely, be proud of. But like I said, that's one. So you need to have a string of, really good results and show that you can compete against Christian Lundgaard and Pato O'Ward on a more consistent basis. And Joe, I agree that Indy 500 is going to be really huge for him, because as you remember last year, he was the one who crashed on the last lap of the Indianapolis 500, which ended under caution. And, that's not the highlight he wants to be making. He wants to go to the Indianapolis 500, show that he can, move towards the front and be close to a Pato O'Ward, as you said, who's going to probably be one of the favorites to win the race. And Christian Lundgaard, I still don't think he's the strongest oval racer out there. I think there's a lot of work that Lundgaard can do on the ovals. But the one guy's brain I hope Nolan Siegel, for his sake, will pick during the month of May is the driver who's going to be in that fourth car, RHR. Ryan Hunter-Reay is going to be he's taking over the Kyle Larson entry that he's had for the last couple of years. And I think an IndyCar champion, an Indy 500 champion, and someone who has, many, many laps around the speedway is going to be very beneficial for someone like Nolan Siegel. So if Ryan Hunter-Reay can help you get along throughout the month and, improve your performance, I think that's someone you can potentially lean on. So we're certainly going to be wishing Nolan Siegel the best as he tries to save his seat in the IndyCar series. And before we go on to IMSA, which is a part of the Grid Endurance Performance Index, Alex Palou is now third in the grid ranking ahead of Kimi Antonelli, and in second place is Marco Bezzecchi from MotoGP. And the top 4 in the grid ranking are from 4, different series. You have Tyler Reddick in NASCAR at 1, Bezzecchi MotoGP. You have Palou from IndyCar, and then out Kimi Antonelli, from Formula One. So Joe, based on the top 4 from the 4 different series, who do you think has been the most impressive to start off the year? And who do you think between those 4, who could be the early favorite for the 2026 Grid Ranking World Championship?
The most impressive, I think, has to be Kimi Antonelli. This is a driver where last year people were talking about where you rushed up. We know all the pressure he was under. And he's come out and he's making the case that he is better than George Russell. He could go out there and get this championship. Unless people catch up from Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren to the Mercedes team, I think it's going to be hard to beat the Mercedes drivers. And if Kimi Antonelli continues to run the way he's running, he's going to be a contender for that F1 championship. And when you look at the way F1's going, unless we also have that big regulation change mid-season, because the way people are, they don't seem to be happy with this current package. I mean, he could potentially dominate the year, or it could be something change and he's not going to dominate. But if you look at history, when Max Verstappen dominated F1, he goes on to become the grid ranking world champion. The one thing working against Tyler Reddick, NASCAR, the consistency has not been there for a long time. The fact he's the first driver since 2020 to lead the grid ranking, I think is a statement of what he's doing so far. But we have 36 races to go. A lot could change between now and then. Alex Palou, I think everyone anticipated he would be up there in the top 5 at some capacity. The fact that he again reclaimed the IndyCar Points Series lead, he's going to be the lead IndyCar driver for quite some time unless there's a drastic change. We'll see how that turns out. Marco Beschecchi, can Aprilia really keep this up all season against Ducati? That's going to be the big test. And will Marc Marquez come alive and be a contender later on the season? So still, it has to be Kimi Antonelli, the biggest, most impressive driver so far out of the top 4 drivers. As for early favorite, I think it's up in the air, too close to call between those 4. But we still have over 30 race weekends to go in the grid ranking, so a lot of time for changes, and it's way too early to see who could be a potential grid ranking world champion at the end of 2026.
Yeah, I agree. It's way too early to tell who's going to be the grid ranking world champion. I do have to agree with you. Kimi Antonelli been up there is a huge surprise because I don't think anyone expected him to be one of the top Formula One drivers to start off the season. If I had to pick someone, I was thinking maybe like a Max Verstappen, but it seemed like the package Red Bull have going right now with their car, not necessarily the best. So after that, I would expect to see like a McLaren driver like Oscar Piastri or Orlando Norris, or maybe like George Russell, Antonelli's teammate up there. But the fact that he's the one who's up there leading the charge for the F1 drivers in the grid ranking, really good for the young driver there from Italy. And as we get back to F1 racing next month in May at Miami, we'll see if Antonelli can continue running strong and establishing himself as a championship contender in F1 and also in the grid ranking.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season is going to work out for Formula One and everybody there. And of course, any changes to the regulations will be reported on Grid tonight, right here on the Grid Network. Subscribe, hit that bell icon. Let's switch over to IMSA, the Endurance Performance Index, the third race for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season. Part of the doubleheader race weekend with the NTT IndyCar Series at the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, entering the 100-minute street race in Southern California. Many wonder if Porsche Penske Motorsports could overcome the balance of performance change with IMSA adding nearly 100 pounds of weight to slow down the dominant German manufacturer due to the change. Porsche did not have the pace to keep up with Acura and Cadillac. The battle for win came down to the number 93 Marshank Racing Acura, the number 31 Action Express Racing Cadillac. What an effort by that 31 team. After a late restart, Renger van der Zande held out Frederik Vesti for the overall win out of Long Beach. It was a big deal for Acura to win the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. With Marshank Racing, van der Zande, and Nick Giololi. However, this win comes as Sports Car 365 and other motorsports media outlet reports that Acura will end the factory GTP program at the end of the 2026 season. According to Sports Car 365, the source said that Acura GTP drivers have already been informed of the decision, and some of the engineers have been reassigned to other projects within the company. Kobe, given the rumblings about Acura uncertainty future and the future in IMSA GTP class itself, how important was this win for Marshank Racing?
It was a huge win for organization because if those reports turn out to be true, it showed that there's no quitting those guys, that they're going to continue to fight to the very end, no matter what's happening. And if Acura is truly going to leave IMSA, this is also an audition for other manufacturers, right? Because I know Marshank Racing, they'll certainly want to stay involved in IMSA in some way or form, whether they continue to run the Acuras, on a non-factory basis, or they decide, to jump ship with another manufacturer, maybe an existing one, or try to bring in a new manufacturer to the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And I thought it was a really great win for Ringer Van de Zande and Nick Yellerly. The Acura, was really hooked up to win the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. If there's any race of the year you want to win, you certainly want to win the one where your manufacturer is the title sponsor. So kudos to them for getting the job done. But I know there's been some rumblings in the last few months about something like this happening, but to actually see, multiple media outlets who are respected in the motorsports media world reporting this, that Acura is set to leave the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And I know Sports Car 365 said we could see an announcement as soon as this week that they're going to be pulling out of IMSA at the end of the year. And it seems like this GTP grid is, already starting to look kind of depleted. I know a few years ago when they announced it, well, several years ago when they announced this regulations format of the GTP cars, with the LMDH and the LMH platform, that this is going to be a golden age of sports car racing. In many respects, it has been a golden age, especially on the FI World Endurance Championship side, which had their season debut this weekend at Imola. This for the 6-hour race there. And I know Matt White's going to have an update on that event in the Grid Endurance Performance Index. And like I was saying, it has been a good time with these regulations. But on the IMSA side, we're starting to see, some manufacturers, there was a lot of uncertainty with where things are going. And if Acura, pulls out and they're not going to have any cars on the grid, going to be 2 down there. JDC Miller Motorsports, the privateer Porsche team on the grid, they're using last year's Porsche because they just don't have the budget to upgrade to the 2026 spec. So I don't know what they're going to do for next year. And then there's rumors that after cutting their World Endurance Championship program, we could see Penske Porsche Motorsport potentially exit the series at the end of the 2026 season as well. So that's potentially 4 to 5 GTP cars down. Then you're really down to the BMWs and the Cadillacs, and also the Aston Martin Valkyrie. And then what are you going to do? You're going to have to hope that McLaren and Ford will bring entries. And we also lost, the Lamborghini at the end of last year. So I'm not really sure what the future holds for the IMSA GTP class. For the sake of this class, I know Sports Car 365 said that this is an option, that we could still see Acura in IMSA next year, but it will be operated on a customer-like basis. But what could come to an end is the factory involvement, the factory support from Acura and Honda that Meyer Shank Racing enjoys now. So if this was to continue, Meyer Shank Racing will basically be doing this all on their own, that they would be, fielding a car or two, with their own staff and not having any factory support, from Honda. I mean, I believe they have the ability to do that if they really want to. I know it's good having the factory support, but if they still have the option to run the Acuras next year, but on a customer basis, I think that would really be good. And it's unfortunate that it sounds like this announcement is inevitable and could be coming, sooner rather than later. But despite all the changes coming, nothing can cure any sad feelings behind the scenes than a win.
A win goes a far way and boosts morale. That would be huge for the Acura team. While Acura claimed that win and it's going to feel good entering the weekend, let's talk about BMW claimed the controversy with Team WRT, the number 24 BMW of Sheldon Vanderlyn, shoved the number 23 of Heart of Racing Aston Martin of Roman DeAngelis wide and off course entering turn number 1 at the end of that long straightaway, but the number 25 BMW of Philip Eng was involved in the most controversial collision with the number 5 JDC Miller Motorsports Porsche of Lauren Heinrich. Started with when Eng crowded Heinrich, putting them into the wall. Then Heinrich made a move on the inside, sending the number 25 BMW spinning into the tire barrier and suffering heavy damage to the rear. Race control decided not to penalize Eng and put Heinrich into the wall. But Heinrich got penalized for crashing the number 25. And I was just like, what's going on, Kobe? This is madness. Nevertheless, Heinrich bounced back from the penalty to finish 6th overall. I'm like, okay, IMSA, what's going on? Were you disappointed with the driving standards of the BMW GTP drivers?
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I just didn't know what to say about both of them. And when I saw the first BMW incident, I was thinking, that's not good. And then I see the second BMW, and I'm like, what on earth is Team WRT doing? And I know on our Monday Night Great Wrestling Show, they have a Weapon of the Week segment. I suggested that we should have a Weapons of the Week in both of those BMWs, because that was just, ridiculous to see those type of driving standards going on. I mean, I'm less upset about what Sheldon Vanderlinde did. I mean, it's still not cool to shove off the Valkyrie like that. I didn't think it was necessary to hip check him and move and put Roman DeAngelis off the course there. I thought that was uncalled for, but I did not like Philip Ings throwing a massive block on Lauren Heinrich the way it did. And if you know anything about Lauren Heinrich, he don't take mess from other drivers. If you watch last year's race on the streets of Detroit in GTD, Heinrich got spun around, and then when he saw the car that was spinning, when he saw the car that had spun him around, he looped it around and spun him too. So like, if my race has been ruined, your race is going to be ruined too. So Lauren Heinrich, he may look like a nice guy and all of that, but he doesn't back down from anyone, and he doesn't take mess. So if you cross him up, he is going to let you know about it. And with Philip Ing throw that block, I know we say in racing you get one block, but you don't get two blocks. And I feel like that this was the case. I mean, Ing was not clear in this situation that he threw this, egregious block on Heinrich, putting them both in the wall. And then Heinrich, he got it to the inside of Ing, and he was like, I'm just taking the corner, and then I don't want to say flat out dumped him, but he just spun him into the tires. And I feel like that was a situation, of you get one block, but you don't get two. And I think at that point, Heinrich wanted to send a message to Philip Ing that you're not going to race me that way and get away with it. And Ing in that situation, he was the one that had a damaged car, and Heinrich, he was able to recover from the penalty and move on from that. But yeah, I was confused why there wasn't a penalty on the egregious block, but there was a penalty on the contact to Heinrich there. I mean, I think Heinrich deserved a penalty for that. I agree with that, but I guess IMSA thought that, given the fact that Philip Ing was basically out of contention after that crash into the barriers, I guess they felt like that was his penalty, that I didn't need to do anything in that situation. But yeah, as we enter the next IMSA race weekend, I really like to see Team WRT, BMW, GTP drivers, just clean it up a little bit, because we don't need to be seeing that.
Yeah, we don't need to be seeing that. Argy-bargy and the little level, we'll love that. This was just ridiculous. I was like, what is going on? And so let's clean this up before we go racing again. GTD, a bit of a different story. Long-awaited return of the top step of the podium for Vasser Sullivan Racing and their Lexus RCF GT3. First time since 2024 Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, where Vasser Sullivan won with the number 12 Lexus, Aaron Talib, and Benjamin Peterson. Since the Long Beach street race from 2 years ago, Vasser Sullivan hasn't won in either GTD Pro or GTD. Lexus, their RCF GT3 car, 10th year of IMSA competition and expected to be the last year, with plans to introduce a new GT3 car in 2027. It's just hard to believe that 2 full years, we come back to Long Beach 2 years later, and finally we get a win for Vasser Sullivan.
I honestly didn't think it had been that long since they won, but after it had been 2 years since this team has won, it really surprises me, because during their time in IMSA, they've been very competitive and they've done a lot of great things in the series. They've contended for race wins and championships all along, but it's just really crazy where in GTD Pro or GTD, they haven't won a race in 2 years. So I'm sure that's a huge sigh of relief for them, and it just shows you, despite being a very strong team, having with a lot of great folks on the personnel side and everything they've accomplished in the past, it's just so difficult to win in IMSA, especially when you put balance and performance into consideration. I think a part of the reason why they haven't won in so long is due to the fact that when you look at the other manufacturers in the GT3 ranks, what's the difference between the Lexus and the other manufacturers? The other manufacturers, since this car debuted in 2017, they've introduced new cars. And when you introduce new cars, of course, you're going to have, speed concerns at first and concerns with reliability. But at some point, most of these manufacturers get their cars running well enough while they're up there contending, for wins and championships. And I think the older the car you have, it's going to be difficult, because the technology, is moved on. And basically, I hate to say it this way, but the Lexus GT3 car, its current version, is basically a dinosaur in GT3 ranks, because it's not modern, as we've seen manufacturers roll out new cars. So I think when they bring the new Lexus GT3 or Toyota GT3, whatever make they're going to call this car next year, I think that they'll be in contention to win more often. and in IMSA, or if they race in the World Endurance Championship as well. I think that this new car can't come sooner enough, but it was still good to show that the old car can still, get the job done, every now and then.
The new car will be interesting to see how it's going to turn out, how it's going to shape up 2027. Already talking about plans. Let's switch over to the Repco Supercar Series. Talking a little bit about balance of performance, balance of power. Repco Supercar Series, busy 4-race weekend, with last race weekend seeing the final race being canceled. Moved over to Christchurch to make it a big 4-race weekend, and you could call it a Ford 4-race weekend because they swept the weekend with 3 different drivers: Kai Allen, Brody Kosecki, and Matthew Payne, who won the last 2 races. But the big storyline I got to feel, Kobe, after this race weekend has to be overall the wild finish and the contact between Chaz Mostert and Brody Kosecki. Mostert finished 4th, but was handed a 30-second time penalty after it appeared he retaliated from Brody Kosecki, making a big move on him on 2 laps to go. So Brody Kosecki gets spun, unable to finish. Mostert finished 4th, but handed a 30-second penalty, dropping him down to 17th, while Kosecki 18th. Kosecki, because of that, lost the points lead to Brock Feeney and the Jason Richards Trophy, which went to Brock Feeney, who is part of the second story, and I'll get to that later. But Mostert, he did apologize, saying that was not his intent. He took the full blame, and he felt he left in the standings. But we don't see this kind of retaliation often in the Supercar Series. Did you buy Mostert's story that he did not intend to have Brody spin around, ruin his race? Or did the anger, the emotions caught up to Mostert and get the best of him?
I'll start off by saying that this move by Chaz Mostert was very unbecoming of a Supercars champion. That this is not something we should be seeing from the reigning champion of the series. I think Chaz is better than this. He knows he's better than this, and it was just uncalled for to do what he did to Brody Kosecki. And I saw comments from both him and Brody after the race, and Chaz was basically saying that where they were racing on track, he wasn't really happy with how Brody was racing him too aggressively. So he just wanted to send a message to Brody like, "Hey, I don't like how you're racing me." And he basically admitted that he didn't mean to hit him, but he felt that it went over the line and that he hit him a lot harder than he meant to, and sent him for a spin, because that was really scary. And after looking at 4 races this weekend at Ruapuna Raceway, when a car goes off track, it kicks up a whole bunch of dust, and it was really scary seeing Brody Kosecki's car spin at a high rate of speed, kicking up all the dust, and then the drivers are not gonna see. When Brody was sliding across the track, I was thinking, please let nobody hit him, because if that happens at that amount of speed, it could be not good for Brody and any driver involved in that situation. But thankfully the field was on their P's and Q's and completely missed them, and just ended up heartbreak for Brody Kosecki, losing the points lead in that instance. And we also know changing the outcome of the Jason Richards Trophy as well. So Brody was obviously not happy after the race. He just kept saying that this is interesting. I think he was really mad and didn't want to try to say anything. He was really frustrated. And Chaz Mostert said that he did try to reach out to Brody Kosecki after the race and try to at least talk to him, but he could not find him. And he said that Brody probably doesn't want to talk to me at this moment anyway. So between now and the next round, I believe they said it's in Tasmania. I believe it'll be really good if those drivers can maybe sit down or have a phone call or whatever, or text, just try to talk it out so there's no bad blood going forward. But I truly believe in this situation that Chaz Mostert, is absolutely in the wrong. And yes, do I buy his story? Only he knows what he meant to do. I do believe him when when he basically said that he wanted to send a message to Brody Kosecki, but whether he wanted to deliberately wreck him, only Chaz Mostert knows that. But from my perspective, he either got really hot under the collar, and he saw nothing but red, and completely lost it in that situation, or he was, or he just intentionally meant to hit him. But real unfortunate situation. As saying, don't want to see anything like that.
Yeah, don't like to see stuff like that. I think the penalty was just. for Chance Monster, and for the defending series champion, it's not the best look. And especially in the Supercar series, yeah, contact occurs. We have hard race and we have fenders, but this could have been a whole lot worse. And we saw it throughout the race weekend. When you get off, it's a lot of dust and visibility goes down. So, yeah, let's see if they could talk it out, move on. Because we got a lot of racing for the Supercar series. And for Brody Kosecki, really, this should just move on. Because he is now 23 points behind Brock Feeney, the championship leader. Brock Feeney has 3 race wins, but he hasn't won since the race 6. So he has not won the last 7 races. But when you look at Ford, they got 12 race wins. And you look at Chevrolet and Toyota, they have 1 race win each. 11 race wins because we're 13 races into the round. So Chevrolet, Toyota, each with 1 race win. I know it was briefly talked about earlier this week about the balance of performance, the parity between the 3 manufacturers, Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota. The way this race weekend went doesn't seem inevitable that Supercar Series will make more changes in the parity.
I'm not sure if they're going to make more changes immediately, but we did see a change after Taupo. That after investigating, they allowed the Chevrolet teams to make some changes to their cars. It drew the ire of some people in the paddock who did not agree with this situation at all. But I think there's some layers to this story. Just outside of just the Chevrolet just not having it compared to the Ford's drivers, and to maybe an extent the Walkinshaw TWG Toyotas, which have really come on strong in the last couple of rounds. And, just looking at the results in race 1, the highest finishing Chevrolet driver during the Friday race was Anton De Pasquale in 5th. And then we had a total of 2 Chevrolets. And the top 10 was Zach Bates in 9th. And then in the second race, highest finishing Chevrolet again, Anton De Pasquale in 6th. And then we had 2 more Chevrolets to make 3 in the top 10 with Jaden Ojeda in 8th and Zach Bates in 10th. And then in the third race, once again, Anton De Pasquale continuing to fly the flag for General Motors, highest finish in Chevy, in 6th place. And we had a total of 2 Chevys in the top 10. It was De Pasquale and then Jack LeBrock. And then in the final race of the weekend, we had Jack LeBrock, the highest finishing Chevrolet driver, in 7th, and then we had Cooper Murray and Cooper Murray in 9th, and Declan Frazier in 10th to get 3 Chevys, at the back end of the top 10. And then when you look at the season-long standings, we only have 2 Chevrolet drivers in the top 10 with Anton De Pasquale in 7th and Jack LeBrock in 10th, and then the rest of the Chevrolet drivers are 14th and worse. So not really good right now. And I say that to bring me to a comment made by Erebus Motorsports team principal Barry Ryan, who's known to be very blunt. I call him Blunt Barry or Blunt Baz because he always speaks his mind and he doesn't care what you think of him or anything that comes out of his mouth. And he made a comment over the weekend that made a lot of people raise their eyebrows when he was asked about all the parity changes and stuff. And this quote that Supercars has on the website from Barry Ryan, he said, at the end of the day, I'll be totally honest, we haven't got any A-grade drivers. And he's basically saying that the Chevrolet drivers and Supercars, that none of them are your top level drivers. When you had a Will Brown when he was on form, or like a Brock Feeney last year in your camp, he's talking about guys like that. You don't have guys like that who can be the difference maker on your team. Someone who is who's going to be up there, fighting for wins on a weekly basis. Yes. So he's saying that he don't believe that Chevrolet has great drivers on their roster right now. And Barry went on to say that some of the drivers won't like hearing that, of course, that they're not great drivers. He said, we haven't got multiple winners in our GM camp. And he said, we're outside the GM camp at the moment. That's our choice. He said, Betty Klemenko, the team owner, he said, and I are proud of our independence as Erebus. And we've been really reasonably successful doing it. And he says, we know we're not ready to win yet. So he said to give it 12 months, an entire year. And he said, if GM teams have started to win, and they're still at the back of the grid with their 2 young drivers in Job Stewart and Cooper Murray, then he said, then you can point the blame at us that we're not doing the job that we need to do, at Erebus Motorsports. So Barry Ryan isn't completely convinced, that is all, Chevrolet, that the Chevrolet supercar is not good right now. He believes that a part of the issue has to be with their lack of driving talent, at the moment. And there was also some criticism, that Barry Ryan actually gave General Motors, and they shouldn't have agreed to, make changes to the Chevrolet, over the off season, and which really put them in a tough spot. And Will Brown, who now is with Ford, saying that he was against, the changes to the Camaro, that happened after Taupo and before Ruapuna Raceway. Will Brown said that you can't give General Motors a leg up because the teams drivers are just not getting the job done right now. And then, I'm looking at Chevrolet's roster right now. Gonna start from the top, Matt Stone, Erebus Team 18. I'm working my way down to Premier. At Matt Stone Racing, you got Jack LeBrock, who's a proven veteran, but we know Jack LeBrock, he can be a consistent veteran that you can have in your team, but I no offense to him, but he is not a top guy in the series. And then Zach Bates, we've seen a lot of potential from him in Super 2, but he's just a rookie, just learning the ropes, same as Job Stewart with Airbus. He's just a rookie learning the ropes. And Cooper Murray, he had a disappointing rookie season outside of almost getting the upset of the century and winning the Bathurst 1000 last year. Cooper Murray last year, he was one of the lowest drivers in the points, and this year it's the same story. He's towards the back of the grid. Anton De Pasquale, he's been the most successful Chevrolet driver this year. And I remember when he went to Dick Johnson Racing, a lot of people had so much expectations for him to replace Scott McLaughlin and be the guy to carry the team forward. And I think Anton De Pasquale, he underperformed in that ride, and that's why he's with Team 18 right now. And then David Reynolds, he's just been your Grizzly veteran. He's had some success in supercars over the years, but he's not a guy who's going to go up there and compete for race wins week in and week out. And then Jaden Ojeda, he's been a wild card and endurance driver for the last several years, and this is his very first time full time in supercars. I think we've seen some flashes with him, but he hasn't developed into a top guy yet. Declan Frazier, he's in his second stint as a supercars driver, trying to prove that he belongs on the grid. So I'm starting to think, Joe, when I evaluate all the drivers in the Chevrolet camp, I know it might have been completely controversial at the time, but I don't think Barry Ryan is completely wrong when he says that you can't just say that the Chevrolet supercar is not good right now. They also have to look at what they have on the driver's side right now, because based on those drivers I mentioned, I hate to say this, but none of them like really stand out as a guy who can go out there and compete against the Brock Feeney's of the world, the Matt Paynes, the guys who are at the top of the championship right now, the Brody Kostecki's, the Cam Waters. Like I don't really see anyone in the Chevrolet camp who can take the fight to Ford and Toyota. So Joe, I'm gonna ask you a follow-up right now. What do you make of Barry Ryan's comments that we don't have any A-grade drivers in the General Motors camp, and that you basically can't say that this is all the car that we need to make all these changes? That is the fact that we don't have any top caliber drivers. Do you think he is right to an extent?
It's so hard because to an extent you look at drivers, and this is not just in supercars but in other series where there are drivers that become superstars. Brock Feeney. I'll look at NASCAR. Cousin Hocevar has a big following. They're young. They have a lot of potential. They get good rides, and they make the most of it. Brock Feeney could have easily been the champion last year. We know what happened that last race. You look at the Chevrolet drivers. They almost got what I would say the rest of the drivers, because Brody Kostecki, past champion, Ford. Will Brown, Ford. Well, SVG and Scott McLaughlin are gone. Jamie Whincup is behind the scenes at Triple Eight Ford. I don't see where these drivers in Chevrolet and Toyota are necessarily second level. I mean, heck, Chas Monster is a defenders champion with Toyota. There's potential for the Chevrolet drivers, but it comes down to the teams. Dick Johnson Racing, Ford. Triple Eight Racing, Ford. I mean, Cam Waters, a Ford driver for a long time. And you look at the results, I think they speak to themselves of what those teams are doing with their drivers. The fact that Brock Feeney, yes, he leads the championship, but he hasn't won the last 7 races. Or last year, it seemed like he wasn't exactly the Marc Marquez where we picked him every pick winner, but he was consistently a favorite to win. Ford has a lot of talent right now. Chevrolet, I think, does need to step it up. Toyota needs to step it up. You can't just say, we got the best, we got a great car, we just don't have the drivers. No, Make it where it's something where the drivers could get the most out of. Because you know what this sort of reminds me of? A little bit of Honda and MotoGP. So reliant on Marc Marquez, top rider. And Marc Marquez gets hurt, and what happened to Honda? Nobody could handle that bike, and they just tanked. And now Honda, that Repsol connection is gone. They're a shell of what they used to be. Juan Mir, not at that level, and he's a series champion. I think Chevrolet, Toyota, look into making the car better and better for your drivers because you can't just say we got something good. It's just the drivers because that's gonna, I think, bite them in the butt, and you're gonna have Ford start to run away with this championship. Which, can you imagine? I mean, all the Fords in the top 10, and we get to the showdown, and it's just a Ford affair. That's really gonna sting for Chevrolet, and they may look back and say we should have done more for our drivers.
Yeah, and looking at the points right now, unless Anton De Pasquale and Jack LeBrock falter, down the stretch, maybe we'll get at least one Chevrolet, in the finals. I think Chaz Mostert's currently, one position outside of a final spot, so I think he'll eventually get in, and then Ryan Wood, I think he's gonna eventually get in. It's just a matter of, we're gonna see all Fords. And then a couple of Toyotas, and then maybe a Chevy will sneak in. And yeah, I do agree that that Chevy needs to continue to work hard and give their drivers something to work with. But also at the same time, you mentioned how Marquez carried Honda, during his final years with the team, and when he was off the bike, they couldn't do anything. That he was the only one that could succeed in the Honda. And looking at the Chevrolet driver roster right now, I can't really think of a Chevrolet driver who can carry that manufacturer, to a victory right now, because it's just real tough sledding for them right now, and we'll see if Chevrolet can try to improve their program as we get deeper into the season. Because we're still early in the season, there's a lot of time for them to make things right. And as you mentioned, Joe, on the Ford side, they have great drivers, and they also have great teams, and on the Chevrolet side, I'm not going to say they have bad teams on the Chevrolet side, but I certainly think when you look at Ford, their quality of teams are certainly a lot higher, in Chevrolet. So I think it could be a mix up. It could be a mix of the cars, not necessarily having the experienced driving talent to get the job done, and then you also have the teams who may not be performing as well as they should at this moment.
100% agree, and it's going to be interesting to see how Chevrolet and Toyota can respond to Ford.
Yeah, for sure. And we're almost out of time for tonight, so I think this is a good point to move on to a great one shining moment from this racing weekend. So let us know in the chat below what's the one thing that stood out to you, whether it was from IndyCar at Long Beach, NASCAR at Kansas, Supercars at Ruapuna, or IMSA also at Long Beach with a doubleheader weekend. With IndyCar. And Joe, start off with you. What's your great one shining moment?
My shining moment is coming from the NASCAR Cup Series, and that's going to Tyler Reddick and the 45 team. What they demonstrated in overtime in the closing stages of the races is why race hard, stay in it, because you just never know. We all saw how Tyler Reddick closed in on Denny Hamlin in the closing laps of regulation, got around. And we all heard Denny Hamlin's crew radio, keep up with him, stay with him. You don't know if a tire's going to go down. You don't know if it's going to have bad luck. And it looked like that was going to happen when Tyler Reddick thought he ran out of gas and hit the wall. Denny Hamlin got around, coming around turn 3 and 4 to get that white flag, but we got a caution. Tyler Reddick fell to 4th place after that restart. Or just wait to 3rd place. 2nd place. Then raced Kyle Larson, a 2-time Cup Series champion, toe-to-toe for the race win. And got that win. Tyler Reddick is having such a start to the season we have not talked about in NASCAR for a long time. The fact that he's leading the grid ranking right now shows he is the dominant driver of the Cup Series. When you won more than half of the races this season so far, and we're so young into the race season, Tyler Reddick has a lot of potential this year, I think, to go out there, get that championship. And even with the chase, where there's going to be a reset, good luck. You're going to have to go through Tyler Reddick. And today's win, I think he has to feel really good because he proved to everyone, even when it looks like it's down and out, that team's not going to give up. They're going to work their butts off to get to victory lane, and he's going to drive his heart out to get to victory lane. What a move by Tyler Reddick. He is my shining moment of the race weekend.
Yeah, that was definitely quite a drive from Tyler Reddick today. And at one point, trying to short pit, it looked like his feel in the car run out and the car stumbled, and then they got back up to speed, and the timing of the caution, able to was able to put enough fuel in there, obviously for an overtime restart there, and end up winning the race. And it's really incredible to watch the level of dominance that Reddick is on right now, a level of dominance we haven't seen since the year of 1987, when Dale Earnhardt was the last driver to win 5 of the first 9 races. Was absolutely, an incredible accomplishment, especially in today's day and age with all the parity that we have in NASCAR. And my shining moment is actually not going to come from any of the series we talk about tonight. It's going to come from one of our endurance performance in that series here at the Grid Network. It's going to come from the FIA World Endurance Championship season opener, the 6 hours of Imola. I got to give a call to Toyota's hypercar team for winning today and spoiling the party for AF Corsa Ferrari, because in Italy this is Ferrari's home race, AF Corsa's home race, and the Ferrari hypercars have had the pace all weekend long at Imola, and it looked like that it was going to be an easy victory for Ferrari. But look no further, it's the brand new Toyota that they introduced this season. It's really crazy. This is this version of the Toyota hypercar's very first race, and they ended up winning this car on debut. And to make this feat even more impressive, this was also Toyota's 100th career start in the FIA World Endurance Championship, and out of those 100 races, this is their 50th win. Yeah, so they've won half of the races that they've entered in this championship, which is absolutely a remarkable feat. It's really crazy that you can say in race number 100, a special milestone for any team and manufacturer, that Toyota Racing have won 50 out of 100 races. So so basically, whenever an FIA World Endurance Championship race is on, you just flip a coin, and there's a 50% chance that Toyota is going to win. I know all the detractors will say, but many of those wins, there'll be like half of them were because of, they had no competition, after Audi and Porsche pulled out of LMP1. So I'm sure all the detractors are going to say that, but still, you had to perform at the highest level possible. And despite some of the down years they've had in the top category, Toyota stuck through it, and they continued to win and excel. And even when the competition came, I know the last few years for Toyota and hypercar, been a big struggle, given the design of the car, and they decided that they didn't want to struggle anymore, so they built the car that looks capable of challenging Ferrari in the FIWC this year, and it's just been really amazing to see what this manufacturer has been able to do on the world stage, and just think it's remarkable that that they have 50 wins and 100 stars. Just remarkable in any form of motorsports.
50 out of 100. That is an amazing feat, and congrats to Toyota and everyone there for doing that. That's through a lot of work, a lot of determination, and great racing. Still got more great racing, but we're going to recap that on Grid Rising tomorrow. Matthew Bro, Tanner Smith, they'll be on the air to recap everything. Don't forget Grid Network TV, full recap of the NASCAR Cup Series race weekend at Kansas Speedway. Of course, Grid Network TV across social media, the updated pick a winner standings, as well as the grid ranking endurance performance index will be posted each and every week. And big thank you to our Patreon investors calling the show: Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, Nico, and Gloria, for investing in the Grid Network through Patreon or YouTube membership, paid membership. You get on the leaderboard there. Super chat, you'll get on the bottom leaderboard where Jason M leads with 3. That's it for Kobe Lambeth as well as Matthew Bro. I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.